Hello everybody, Niklas Heidloff here. In this video I'm going to demonstrate how developers can experience IBM Bluemix when building applications in the cloud for the first time. Bluemix is IBM's platform as a service that allows developers to easily and fast build and deploy applications without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure. I'm going to demonstrate 4 steps. First, how developers can create applications in Bluemix and how they can create and bind services to their applications. In the second step, I'll use an existing Java sample leveraging the Cloud and NoSQL database, and I will show how to deploy it to Bluemix. In the next step, I'll explain how to set up an Eclipse IDE and how to run and debug the sample locally. And after I will have done some changes to the application, I'll demonstrate one way how to push the changes to a source control repository and how to deploy them. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Developers can create and manage applications on the website Bluemix.net. If you haven't registered yet, you can do this right here and try all runtimes and services for free for 30 days. Even after the first months, you can try out services since all services provide free plans to experience their capabilities. Since I'm already logged on, I can navigate to my dashboard where my applications show up. Every Bluemix developer gets his or her own organization, but you can also join other organizations to collaborate with other developers. I have currently one application in my dashboard called News Aggregator Demo, and I want to describe now how to create this application from scratch. I start by clicking the button Create an App. This brings me to another page where I can choose a so-called boilerplate or runtime. Bluemix supports different runtimes for different types of developers. There are runtimes for Java, Node.js and Ruby that come out of the box. Additionally, you can use so-called Cloud Foundry build packs as, for example, a PHP build pack. The boilerplates at the top are a great help to get started. They include not only specific runtime, but also services, and they come with samples that can be run out of the box. The last one, by the way, that was added just this week is called WordPress on Bluemix. I pick now the Liberty runtime since I want to build a Java application, and I give it a name, News Aggregator Demo 1. And then I click Create. Now in the next step, the dashboard of my new application is displayed, and we just need to wait a little bit here, and then you will see, so this is my dashboard of the application. In the middle you can see that I'm using here the Liberty runtime. In the right column there are status messages and an activity log, and right now the application is staging, and then after that it will be started. And while we are waiting, another quick note here is a very useful link is this View Quick Start link that helps you really to get started. It shows you how to download the source code, how to deploy the application and so forth. So we still need to wait a little bit, and it's still staging. Another thing that you see here are the available routes. So this will be the URL in a second that we can use to open up this application. Each runtime comes, so we are done now, the application is running, so I can click on this URL and it brings me here to this web page, which is a really simple application that comes with a Liberty runtime. It's essentially only an indication that everything works successfully. In the next step, I want to add a service to my app. So I go back to the application dashboard and click Add a Service. This brings up the catalog that shows all available services. There are services for Watson, mobile, DevOps, web apps, data management, security, Internet of Things, and many others. I pick now Cloudant as my database service, and I pick a plan which is free since I need less than 2 GB of storage, and say create. And this adds now the database, the cloud database service to my application. Just need to wait a little, and then I need to confirm that I want to restage the application. And while this is going on, you can see that the service has now been added to the application. It shows up here. And the nice thing is that when I created and bound this service to my application, Bluemix created a cloud user for me. So when I open up here the credentials, you can see the username, password, host and URL and so forth. And when I click on the service and then again on the launch button, I will see the cloud and user interface that allows me to create and manage my databases. And here I'm logged in as a cloud end user, which is mapped to my Bluemix user, and as you could see, or as you could not see, I didn't have to log in again, since there is a single sign-on available between Bluemix and the different services. So what you have seen so far is how to create an application and how to add a service, but the application doesn't really do much yet. So in the next step I will explain how to use a real app instead. The application I'm going to use is a news aggregator that federates and displays news from various sources in one place. The application is a subset of the news aggregator for Bluemix developers called Bluemix.info. On Bluemix.info, by the way, you can find all news related to Bluemix very easily. The complete application is available as open source on GitHub. The subset of the app that I use today is available on JazzHub, which is the DevOps service integrated in Bluemix. So here is this subset of the application called News Aggregator Demo, and what I want to do is to create a fork so that I can do my own modifications to the sample. I give it a name. I choose the same name as the Bluemix application name. I deselect this checkbox, but I select Deploy to Bluemix, where I can define my data center, my organization, and my space demo. And then I click Create. So now the new project is created, the new fork, which takes a little bit. Here it is. The name is News Aggregator Demo 1. And what I want to do next is build and deploy this application. So I click on Build and Deploy and choose Advanced here in a second. There it is. And now I can define two things. First of all, how to build the application, and in the second step, how to deploy it to Bluemix. So let's start by adding the builder here. My project uses Maven, so I choose this here, Maven. Then I leave all the other defaults and I make sure that the checkbox here is clicked, automatically build when a change is delivered or pushed. So this is something I will demonstrate a little later. And then I click Save. So now I can request a build, and that triggers the build process. It's queued and it's going to start in a second. And while the build is being done, let me go ahead and add a so-called stage where I define how I want this build to be deployed to Bluemix. So here again I can define my data center, my organization, my space. I leave all the defaults except that I'm going to change one little thing here, because the name of the WAR file has changed. It's not News Aggregator Demo 1, but it's only News Aggregator Demo. And I also again make sure that this checkbox is clicked, automatically deploy builds that succeed in the previous stage. In other words, builds that could be, or applications that could be built successfully will be deployed automatically. So I save this, and here is my new information. As you can see, the build was successful, and I will deploy it now to demo, which is the configuration I just defined here. So now it's requesting a deployment, which is queued. And while this is going on, I can quickly show you here information about the build. So I can click on it, and then I see all the logs that have been generated. Come on. And it ends with a finished success. There's also other tabs where I can run directly my tests and so forth, where I can see changes, etc. So let's go back to the pipeline, and we just need to wait a little longer, I guess. So the deployment is going on now, and once that is done, we should be able to see this application now deployed to our Bluemix test application. Okay, good. So the deployment is done, and I can now go back to the application, to the URL, and just do a refresh, and then the new application should come up. So this is the application. Now we just need to wait another second here for the first news entry to show up. So it works. Our first own application is now running on Bluemix. In order to prove that this application actually works, let me just add one entry. There is no editor user interface yet, but only an API explorer using Swagger. And let me just pick here the REST API that I need. Add or update news entry. So here I can say the author is Niklas Heidloff, and I leave all other defaults, my title and so forth. And then I can invoke this REST API, press try it out, and here is the new ID of my news entry. And now when I navigate back and do a refresh, you can see the new entry showing up here. In the next part of the video, I will demonstrate how to set up the sample in an Eclipse IDE and how to run it locally. While Bluemix is a rapid application development and deployment platform, it is not a replacement for your existing tools. You still develop locally, which allows you to debug the code before you deploy it. In the interest of time, I've already installed Eclipse, my Java Runtime 1.7 and the Liberty profile in Eclipse. You can find instructions in the README of the sample project on JazzHub. After Eclipse has been set up, I need to get the application source code. As source control system, I use Git, which is integrated in IBM DevOps in addition to the other alternatives GitHub and also IBM's own source control system. I need to copy the Git URL and navigate to the Git perspective in Eclipse, and here I can choose to clone a Git repository. So I paste the Git URL, and I also need my password since I want to push my changes in a later step. So I say next, next, and finish, and then the source code is downloaded. Now after I've done that, I can switch to the Java perspective, and now I need to import my project. I import the project as a Maven project, as an existing Maven project. I need to navigate to my Git directory. Here it is. And then the project is imported, and Maven now goes ahead and downloads all the dependencies, which takes a little while. So for me it was actually pretty fast because I had already done that, but if you do it the first time it does take some time, and you might even have to force to trigger this process by selecting here Maven and then update project. Now I'm almost done except of one thing. In order to access the cloud and database that Bluemix created in an earlier step from the local application, I need to copy the credentials from Bluemix and paste them in the app. So I go back to Bluemix and copy the URL from the cloud and credentials into the clipboard. And then I navigate back to the IDE, into the database utilities class right here, and here is where I can paste that URL and I save it. So this class database utilities uses the environment variables on Bluemix when running this application on Bluemix, and it uses this URL when running it locally so that you can access the same database. There are other ways to do it, but this is the approach that I chose in this example. And by the way, the same utilities class creates the database the first time the application tries to access it, and it also creates the design and a sample news entry. To show this quickly, let's navigate back to the cloud dashboard. Here is the new Bluemix.info database, and in here there are some views. There's one view, for example, for curated news entries, and this should be the blog entry. Now this is the first one. The other one is the news entry that I created earlier. So now let's run the application. Let's go back to the IDE. And the last thing I need to do here is to add this application to Liberty. So this is it. And then I say finish and I launch my local Liberty server. So it takes a couple of seconds. And then I can open up a web browser, navigate to this URL, and in a second my local application should show up here. Here it is, and it does show the same two entries. And in order to prove that it also works here locally, I choose again the API Explorer, and this time I say just get me the list of curated news. I press the button try it out, and here are my two news entries. In the last part of the video, I'm going to demonstrate the continuous delivery capabilities in Bluemix a little more. I want to change some code and deploy the new version of the application. So let's navigate to home.html so that I can change a little bit there. Home HTML, here it is, and this is the title. And I change it to changed. I save it and go back to my web browser. Here is the online version. Where was the local version? Here I need to navigate back. And when I do a refresh, you see it already showing up here. So it does work locally. Now, how do I push this change to Bluemix? There are multiple ways to do this. In the interest of time, I will only demo one alternative. I will push the source changes to Git and then let DevOps do the build and the actual deployment to Bluemix. So let's do this now. I go back to Eclipse and choose here Team, Synchronize Workspace. These are my changes, database, utilities, and home. And I commit them, some changes, and also push them directly. Okay, and now that it's done, I can navigate to my DevOps UI, to my pipeline, and you can see in here that a build is queued, which is because, as you might remember, I defined earlier to trigger new builds whenever new code is pushed. So this is what just happened. Now the build is going on, and once that is done, it will trigger automatically the deployment to Bluemix in the second step. Okay, good. So now that the deployment has been done, I can go back to the application running on Bluemix, and when I refresh, I should see the new change title showing up right here. There it is. What you've seen in this video was how to create your first application on Bluemix, including a database service, how to run the app locally, and how to push the updates back to Bluemix. Pretty easy and powerful, as I think. Now, as I said, this sample is only a subset of the news aggregator running on Bluemix.info. Bluemix.info leverages additionally several other services that I want to show quickly. Here is the dashboard of Bluemix.info in Bluemix. In order to scale, we use multiple instances, and we use the auto-scaling service to even create more instances if necessary. To work efficiently when running multiple instances, we use an in-memory data cache where all displayed news entries are cached. And other configuration is stored in the HTTP session, which is made available to all Liberty instances via the session cache service. We enforce authorization via the single sign-on service so that curators have to log in via their IBM ID before they can manipulate data. And we use the workload scheduler service to trigger one of our REST APIs on a scheduled basis to read feeds. These entries are then put in a queue from where content curators can approve new entries, which is easier than adding them manually. If you want to find out more about Bluemix.info, visit my blog and check out the open source project on GitHub. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.